Hello, brothers and sisters. I hope you've had a wonderful time singing to the Lord because we're done for now. Yes, we've touched the last servant song. And in this sense, we're going to actually put aside even the Old Testament and focus back on the New. What I'd like to look at for the next couple of studies is actually quite a project. Two epistles. Two who are controversial and also very interesting. Maybe you're wondering, what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. Yeah, both of them in this huge study. Now, I said controversial because one of the subject matter discussed in both of them is actually eschatology, the end times. And I will try not to put my own opinions or ideas in the text and let the text speak for itself. And that's what we need to do. Let this text speak for itself in its context. Now, the first epistle talks about Jesus coming to get them, and the second is about the Antichrist. But again, we want to let the text speak for themselves. But that's for much later. I think it's interesting because of the way Paul approaches the writing of these two epistles. See, most of the time, Paul, like in Colossians, Ephesians, and Romans, will give first what we call doctrinal section. Truth. These are truth you need to know. But then we'll move on to application in the last section of the epistles. Right? The last couple of chapters is all about how you should live this out. It's not like that in Thessalonians. Actually, it's very similar to another double epistle. It is teaching and application mixed together with a lot of intimate knowledge of who Paul is. It's very personal, if you will. The other double epistle that's very similar is Corinthians, where again, Paul is giving teaching and application as we go along chapter by chapter. And there's a lot of personal aspect too. There's a lot of love for both of these churches. Now, why do these epistles exist? Well, the first main reason is to encourage and solidify this very young baby church. We find out in Acts that Paul was there about 3 Sabbaths or 2 weeks, right? 3 weekends, if you will. He didn't have that much time to really help establish a church like the Church of Corinth. And so he wants to make sure that they're still on the right track. That's why he sends back even Timothy once he has to leave and run for his life to make sure that everything's okay. He wrote these epistles to help them in that case. So that's why there's a lot of encouragement about you've learned these things, and I hope you will continue in them. And that tells us a lot also about Paul's effort. See, we're so used to church being one morning every week where there's a preaching of about an hour, maybe 30 minutes, a lot of singing and talking together, and during the week maybe one Bible study. But back in the day when church were beginning, the primitive church as we call it, or Paul's ministry, teaching was on every day. So the way Paul expresses it in these epistles is that he was working during the day, and then in the evenings he would spend many hours with these people, these believers, helping them understand doctrine. And again, it's so weird and sad because nowadays we want to kind of reject the other doctrine. All these truth things, that's for students that are trying to become pastors. It's not for us. Yet Paul, establishing churches, thought it was for them. For the common folk, for everybody, spending hours upon hours of his tired time after working hard to teach him these basic truths. That's why in the epistles he says, you already know these things, continue in them. I'll say that a lot actually. You already know, continue. Now another reason is also to answer questions, like for the Corinthians. Paul is trying to help them understand. One of the main questions is, what will happen to the dead? These deaths probably happened because of persecution. Right? Back then, you put to death the Christians. Maybe some of them died because of persecution, and now the Christians were wondering, wait, Jesus didn't come back yet. If Jesus comes back to get us, what happens to them? They're in the ground. Do they stay there? And Paul tries to answer that. And with keeping in mind, when we get to that section, that famous and controversial section, Paul is answering questions. Same thing for 2 Thessalonians. Where again, Paul is actually dealing with a problem of some who have said, we know when the end has come. We know how it works. And Paul says, don't listen to them. He's dealing with a problem again, just like with the Corinthians. So again, we keep that in mind. He's trying to encourage young believers that he didn't have to get as much time with them as he wanted. He's answering their questions to help solidify them and root them in Christ. And yet he already gave them much teaching because that was important to Paul. So with all of that information, I highly encourage you to read them for yourselves before the next study. Read 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. One sitting. It won't take that long, but it'll help you get a greater context of what's going on when we get to the study of these two amazing books. With that said, brothers and sisters, be blessed.